in the caption. And people should be coming in very soon. Don't see anyone yet. Gotta make sure there aren't any concerns on our. Oh, we got some people. Hello, Linda, Kip, Claire, Ajua, Ace. Um, please let us know where you're tuning in from. I know some of you, I checked our list before we started. I know some of y'all are from Connecticut, of course. Some of you are from Western Mass, where I just moved from and lived in for a while. I miss it very much. Hi, Diane. Um, and oh yeah, Mount Holyoke College.
Oh
Awesome.
wow. All the way from Mount Holyoke. I love Mount Holyoke. Yeah, I'm doing some work with them right now. It's delightful.
Awesome. Yeah, you're great. Yeah, I worked at the Five Colleges Consortium, and
Okay.
Mount Holyoke College is part of it.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
That's
someone's from
amazing.
West Hartford. All right, got started very soon. We're just waiting for a few more people to arrive. Yeah, if you don't want to let us know where you're tuning in from, let us know maybe what brought you here or just anything. Feel free to have a conversation in the chat as well. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section as we go along. Like as soon as you think of something, just put in the Q&A. We'll try and get to it whenever we have a little break in the conversation. Um, and yeah, we'll just go ahead and get started. And the rest of the folks can arrive when they arrive. Um, so hi, if it's your first time here, I'm Omar Acevedo, and I'm the literary program coordinator and your moderator for this evening at the so I'm the literary program coordinator at the Mark Twain House and Museum in Hartford, Connecticut. And I thank you very much for joining us for this virtual program for Falling Back in Love with Being Human, Letters to Lost Souls by Kai Cheng Thom. First, I want to thank our sponsors. Our virtual programs are produced in part with support honoring the late Frank Lord. We are incredibly happy to honor his memory with these programs, and we are also very grateful to the Wishwell Foundation and Connecticut Public WNPR for supporting all of our virtual programs. I know some of you aren't members, so you might consider becoming a member. All members receive free admission to our author programs, the house and museum, year-round discounts in the store and cafe, and much more. Please visit our website for more information, or just reach out to me and I'll get you connected with the right folks. Um, I have a little bit of cold, so I might be clearing my throat or sound nasally, whatever. So just letting you all know. Now on to our guest. Our author, Kai Cheng Thom, is a writer, performance artist, and community healer. She is the author of the novel Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars, which was chosen by Emma Watson for her online feminist book club and shortlisted for the Lambda Literary Award. The poetry collection, A Place Called No Homeland, was an American Library Association Stonewall Honor book, and her essay collection, I Hope We Choose Love, received a Publishing Triangle Award. She also writes the advice column Ask Kai, Advice for the Apocalypse for Extra. So like as I said, during this event, we encourage you to have a conversation with each other in the chat. If you have a specific question, you can post that into the Q&A section down on the bottom left of the screen at any time. Don't wait until the end of the program. Just ask it whenever it pops into your head. And yeah, let's keep this a safe and loving space. And we'll get started. So yeah, please sit back and enjoy. Hi Kai.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Omar. It's such a delight.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, so I have my copy here. I have this
Yay.
fake background because I have like boring blank walls, and this is better. So it's kind of coming in and out. But so tell us about this book. Tell us Um, tell us like what is it about beyond like like the blurbs on the back or like in the jacket? What are we getting into here?
Yeah, so this is a book of love letters. And each love letter is actually like a poem unto itself. I was a spoken word artist for many years, and
Mm,
so you can probably hear the rhythm of like a spoken word poem in these letters. I started writing this book. Okay, so the behind the scenes of writing this book is that I was suffering in 2021. I mean, who wasn't suffering in
yeah,
2021, right? Like,
seriously.
we're all just like trapped in like a horrible global situation. Canada, where I'm from, was definitely still in lockdown. I think lots of the
Hmm.
states was as well. And a little known author by the name of J.K. Rowling had just put out a statement about her feelings on trans people, and I actually really encourage people to go and read that statement because there's a lot in there, and some of it I really struggle with, and some of it I find like actually very moving, because J.K. Rowling, for those who like don't know, I think it's like impossible not to know now, but like J.K. Rowling is the author of the Harry Potter series, and she came out with some fairly strong views on transgender rights, and
Hmm.
in many ways. You might say that she is opposed. She probably would say she's pro human rights, but what she really
Yeah.
means is like that she is opposed to trans women being able to self-identify as such legally, like in an ID sense, to enter women's spaces like bathrooms and lockers and that sort of thing. And then she's made a lot of comments about transgender children as well, which I find, troublesome. And I'm not going to get too deep
Mm.
into that right now. But what I will say is, a lot of my friends and contemporaries in the literary scene and the trans community were deeply upset, and I totally get it. I like with J.K. Rowling, I also was very upset. But reading her statement, I was quite affected, actually. I was like very moved by how she referred to her own experience of domestic violence or intimate partner violence, as part of like the motivation for her fears around transgender people and our participation in the public sphere. And
Hmm.
I was in this interesting situation where I was like, I still really disagree with this person's opinion, but I deeply empathize with the place that it comes from. And I was sort of like, I really hoped like and wished that like if people were to disagree with me, and I'm like a much smaller, much smaller public figure than J.K. Rowling, but people disagree with me all the time, right? I would still really hope that people could see and empathize with me, right? And this was sort of the beginning of this book. It's a series of love letters. All of the love letters are either to a part of myself I dislike, or to somebody who's like opinions or perspective that I disagree with. But the letter is a love letter intentionally, like trying to
Hmm.
find deep empathy, deep compassion, for people we dislike, including when people means ourselves, right? Um,
Yep.
and I'm just obsessed with this, right? I've been an activist for a really long time, and I don't think that like outright rejection or like dehumanization can possibly make our world a better place. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I know there's a part of the book where you address it specifically to TERFs,
Yes.
which is, an acronym for exclusionary radical feminists, right?
Yeah, yes.
And yeah, and it's like, I mean, you address a lot of people who have hated you or other trans women.
Yeah.
Um, and it just made me think like, oh, sorry, so you're talking to the TERFs and and it's like, why are you not allowing like I don't want you to die. Why do you want me to die? And it's
Right.
like this limiting point of view where people are like there's only so much space for women for or like what is categorized as a woman,
Right, right.
or there's so much space for love, or there's just like this scarcity mindset about all
Yes.
these like
Yes.
identities and think complicated ideas. Why do you think that people go in that direction where they're like, you know, like um there can only be a woman is only someone who was born with a uterus, for example. Why
mhm.
do people go in that direction of like limiting these things?
Yeah, I mean, this is like the deep question at the heart of human conflict, right? Um, so I'll do my best. I think, this is such a relevant question for, especially for Americans, right now. There's so much discord, like, and strife over like who counts in like the category of woman.
Hmm.
And I think what you're pointing to, this scarcity mindset, is such a good term for it, because really I think this is about um, fear and like the automatic empathy override that happens when we start to fear for our own rights, our own safety, our own like sense of personal integrity. And we see this like replicated in different kinds of human conflicts and oppressions all over the world, in all kinds of spaces. The example of cisgender women and trans women is one, but like, if we think about how, for example, the dehumanization of Black, Indigenous, and people of color happens in the United States, it is
Yeah.
so often about like middle class people of privilege who are saying, "Oh, I'm scared of the other, and in order
Hmm.
to protect my safety, I need police with guns. I need, people to police the subway. I need to lock, marginally housed or homeless people out." Right? We see this with gentrification, driving people away,
Yeah.
and it's always justified with the language of safety, my safety, my safety, my
Hmm.
safety.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's not that people don't deserve to be safe. We all deserve to be safe. Women,
Hmm.
like whatever, we all deserve to be safe. But there's this leap that happens where we're like, I deserve to be safe. And then like actually we forget about the other person's personhood. I see this all that I was a social worker for many years in my life, and I think so much about the way we treat unhoused or, homeless people, where we start with homeless or unhoused and we forget the people part, right? And there's
Yeah.
just so much fear in the middle class, or even, in the working class, like the housed classes, where we're like,
Yeah.
oh, those people are scary, they're scary, but they're actually people.
Yeah.
And we let our fear drive us to like calling police on folks and stuff like this, when really they just like are trying to exist. And I think that there's so many parallels, all over the place with all the kinds of oppression. And my ask to the world is like, when we are feeling that fear, when we are feeling unsafe, we really need to ask ourselves, like, am I actually unsafe? Or is it that I'm uncomfortable about the presence of somebody with less privilege than me?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, I grew up working class, and even though like we grew up in a tough neighborhood, we,
Uh-huh.
definitely were instilled with a lot of fear of
Mm-hmm.
everything out in the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always say it created. I have three younger brothers. It created one bookworm and three gamers. So
Oh wow. I mean, there's some silver linings, right?
yeah, yeah. Some of us made a profession out of it.
Right.
So um yeah, and speaking of safety, you've had a lot of experiences where you have been in situations that are unsafe
Right.
or could have been, right?
Sure. For sure.
Where you're dealing with clients and customers and all your different professional, like life, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, how did you deal with that at the time of like sort of balancing like this is a human, but
Uh-huh.
also I have to keep myself alive, I guess.
Totally. Well, I am a deep lover of human interaction, which,
Hmm.
sometimes I really question that. Like, I'm like, Kai Cheng Thom, was it a good idea to put yourself in the same space as all these
Hmm.
people? I've worked in
Yeah.
hospitals, I've done street outreach, and I've been a sex worker, right? So I've worked with, clients of
Hmm.
many kinds. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of uncomfortable and awkward, and there is some dangerous as well. When you're serving any clientele of any class
Hmm.
background, honestly,
Hmm.
there is some danger. And I think, first of all, like, just to acknowledge that, like, we are going to be scared sometimes. Like human beings are marvelous and incredible, and they're also like kind of terrifying sometimes. Um, Especially when they're upset, angry, sad, deprived, right? Humanity expresses itself in these ways. And sometimes the expression is like a boundary crossing or violation, something hurtful or harmful. And like just giving ourselves compassion for our own emotions and responses is I think the first step. But the second thing is like I think for me really cultivating like a skill set around um, engaging with people in a way that like recognized their humanity
Mm-hmm.
without permitting like serious boundary transgressions was like
Yeah.
a really amassed like a really incredible growth for me, and I'm still working on it. I'm not like perfect by any means, but I think there was like this shift for me when I realized that like punishment and control was not going to help me be safer. That like
Mm-hmm.
responding to violence with violence was not going to help me out. But that doing the opposite not only, had the potential to make me safer, but also like really enriched my life, like opened me up to a lot of possibilities and a lot of human relationships that transformed me profoundly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I'm just remembering a part of your book where you're talking about the different Johns, the different clients that you had in your sex work, and you named them. I mean, I don't. It's kind of irrelevant whether it's the real names, but you
It
put
is
this
not, but
little, yeah, yeah, but you put this like little nugget of information about them, and it's like, oh, that's a person. That was a person that needed something. They
oh yeah,
needed like the person that needed to slow dance,
right.
or the person that brought you the tomatoes.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, yeah, these are people. They need something. They have to, you know, um, they have to go about it some way, I guess. But yeah. Um, yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, actually, what you were saying has made me so happy, like to think about that particular piece, a lot of sex workers have read the book, and pretty much all of them have told me like that particular piece is their favorite. Because
Yeah.
if you're a sex worker for any amount of time, you meet lots of horrible clients, Johns or,
Mm,
tricks, but you also meet lots
yeah.
of amazing ones. And I think like I just there's something so powerful about that, like the nugget, right? Like just to like, I had this John and he liked to slow dance. I
Yeah.
had this trick
Yeah.
and he brought me chocolates, like all that kind of stuff is like it's so quick. We're so quick to dehumanize. Like, oh, like we believe in like the shadowy villain at the edge of society, and like the sex worker client is one of those shadowy figures that we very
Yeah.
easily dehumanize as like predatory or pathetic. Um, and we forget, I think, sometimes in the light of contemporary social justice movements, that like almost anybody or everybody can become like pushed into the margin like that. And queer
Mm,
people, trans people, sex workers
mhm,
ourselves
mhm,
pushed into
mhm.
the margin. And like, there's just something for me that's really important about doing that piece of humanization. Like that,
Yeah.
sex workers are people with hobbies and talents and like often
Yeah.
parents, right? And queer people obviously all the same. So I just yeah, that's so important for me, just to hold on to
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah, because I feel like something that really I'm getting into it.
Oh yeah.
So something that really frustrates me a lot, especially when I am in conversations with people who are also progressive or social justice. I wouldn't say activists. I don't think most
Oh,
of the people I would say are activists, but they have an opinion
that's
about,
a great distinction,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, because they're like, sometimes they're not being active for a very
Yeah,
good reason.
sure, sure.
But that's, it's like two things.
Yeah, no, they're activists on
So
Instagram, maybe, but
yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I saw some people going after you, and I was just like, y'all are not getting it. You are not getting it. But like this black and white thinking, it's just drives me crazy because it's like you can't be like, oh, this whole group of people are horrible. yes, there's some people in that group might be doing some horrible things or had
Mm,
done horrible things throughout history,
mm-hmm.
but it's like it's just so much more messy. Like humans are so messy. Like we're so messy and complex as one.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking about groups, like you mentioned having trans sisters that are not very supportive,
Oh,
like
totally.
I've
Yeah.
certainly had cis gay men that are not at all very supportive of me. So
Right.
so it's so it yeah, it's a little frustrating. And I think for me it goes into like the more cynical
Mm,
side of
mm-hmm.
like, so maybe I lose touch with the love a little bit and I'm just like, I'm just still sick of y'all.
Right.
like
Right.
like oversimplifying all this stuff. I mean it could be anything, any kind of big topic that's happening in the world.
Mm,
Um
mm-hmm.
how do you do you feel like, because I think in the book I do, there are some moments where I feel like, oh, like Kai is like fed up, like she's done, like but then there's then you come back, so it's
Yes.
like, oh,
From the
that's
edge.
perfect. I feel like that's like sometimes we can allow ourselves to be a little mad, a little
Yeah.
frustrated.
Totally. Or like hella frustrated
Yeah.
even, I so appreciate this because, I think it's one thing for, progressives like me and you, like we're progressive people. It's one thing to like um point a finger at conservatives or at J.K. Rowling, but like even our own
Yeah,
communities can have this like very rigid kind of black and white thinking that you're talking about.
totally.
And it's different maybe when a marginalized community does black and white thinking or like, but because of the power differences that exist between, say,
Hmm.
like wealthy white upper middle class people and like, working class people of color. There's a power differential, which means that, the impact of that thinking is different, but also still it is sometimes a dehumanization, right? And I think it's amazing to me. I've been doing racial justice stuff, sometimes activism, sometimes cultural stuff, for like 12 or 14 years now in my life. And it's
Hmm.
amazing to me how, sometimes some of the people that I work with or organize with can have amazing politics, like amazing progressive
Hmm.
politics when it comes to race, and still be so dehumanizing about queer people or trans people. And the same is
Hmm.
true on the reverse, right? That like queer and trans people
Yeah.
who are white can be super racist and like, it's just fascinating to me, and it hurts that we can't. I think maybe it's like a human tendency to not hold
Hmm.
complexity.
Yeah.
But we need complexity in order to actually solve the problems that like we're facing today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember a part in the book, when you're a baby activist
Yeah,
and you like showed up to like your first like group and they were like, okay, come over here, like we're gonna tell you like why the things that you said were
we're
problematic.
problematic.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh wow, I exchanged like one rigid thing for another,
Uh-huh.
and then you felt like a little bit of like a wanderer. I remember use this like wander like wondering, and then wandering like, my Puerto Rican accent is messing all this up, but wandering like walking around, like the earth. Um, and because you're like, well, I don't know where exactly I fit in. And it just made me realize about something that happened to me. Oh, did you freeze Kai? Oh, I think Kai froze. She'll be back very soon. Her face didn't change, so I thought, oh, that's strange. Um, all right. Oh, we lost Kai, but she'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being in this conversation with us. What do you all think? What do you all think about, Lisa wrote, human tendency to not hold complexity. So, so true. Um, It is very complicated out there. Yes, we'll just wait for Kai to come back. Just seeing if she called me or anything. Nope. We'll just wait for her to come back. I'll sort of riff. So yeah, I see this online, and of course, I think it's very difficult that a lot of our lives are online because it's hard to really I mean, I'm not against social media at all. I love social media. But it does create a sort of one-sided thing where people are just sort of screaming into a void or into an echo chamber. And so people aren't actually having constructive conversations. I'm sure you all know this, but um it's it is not helping. It's just making things worse. Um I wish there was a way for all of us to just for like social media to be limited somehow. But that would mean that the companies would have to sacrifice their money, which is not going to happen. But oh, let me check my email, see what Kai says. There's nothing there. Does anyone have any questions? Um, since Kai is not here, you can ask me questions about the Mark Twain house or about me. I'm pretty much an open book. I've been the literary program coordinator at the museum for about a year and a half. Um, that's been like 150 different events that I've run. So I'm not always the moderator. I'm the moderator today. Um, but I usually am in the background. And I just want to encourage you all to buy Kai's book. There's a link in the chat for it. Um, it's if you get it from us, it's like less than $2 more than Amazon, but you're helping the museum. Um, and if you're in Connecticut, or even Western Mass and you want to drive by the museum and just pick it up, you can take a look at the museum. Obviously you need to pay to go on a tour, but you can go into the museum. So there's the museum center that has exhibition spaces, and then there's the house, the actual house. Okay, Kai is coming back. So yeah, come visit us. And sometimes we have events in person too. Um, and you can see me in person. Hello, welcome
Oh
back.
my gosh, I'm so sorry.
It's
There's
okay.
like there's two telecom companies in Canada,
Oh,
and one of them cuts out like just does. Anyway,
oh.
I'm hot spotting. We are back. I so
Okay, okay.
apologize.
No, it's okay. I just kept talking about random stuff,
Oh,
so
thank God.
kept people entertained.
Great.
They're like, we didn't come here for him.
Oh, no. You're amazing. Yeah, no, I have so much respect.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Like I told you, I was telling Kai before like I'm a talker, I'm an open book. I get it from my mom, who I love very much, and we have lunch every Tuesday. So
That's really amazing, actually.
yeah, well, now that I have this job closer to where she lives, like I can see her a lot more
Gotcha.
often.
Gotcha. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I don't remember where. Oh, I was talking about yeah, how you were in this group and you went from, you
Right.
know, you were in this very restrictive religious um group growing up, and
Right.
then you went into this sort of strict progressive group, and you
Yes.
didn't feel like you really belonged, because it's just like so, um, restrictive, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the humans have this interesting tendency. I like another interesting tendency I've noticed is like we really love dogma, like we really love like a set of rules. It's so amazing for,
Yeah,
like especially, in context where we talk about freedom a lot. Like we
yeah.
love liberation, but we do not want people to us. And that's
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, in the country. So I grew up, in a Chinese evangelical Christian context, and there were a lot of rules, and a lot of restrictions. And when I discovered that I was queer, when I was like 5, like it was clear. And I spent so much of my early life longing for freedom to be with, liberated people. And then when I left home, as you said, like, joined a group of like a community of activists, most of them queer identified. And it was amazing how like restrictive, yes, how judgmental, like how shaming and full of rules that community was, and in some ways still can be. And I was like, man, like if I wanted all these rules and to be ashamed of myself all the time, I would have stayed a Christian. you know I mean, there's lots of wonderful Christian and queer communities, and
Yeah,
also
yeah,
some
of
queer
course.
Christian communities, but there is like a lot of dogma and
Hmm. Hmm.
like a closed-mindedness out there, and sometimes it takes progressive forms.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that so many people are leaving in religious institutions,
Hmm.
churches and temples and mosques, et cetera, only to bring that dogma into, you know, non-religious spaces.
Right, right.
Whether we're talking about progressive stuff or Tay Tay or Beyonce or
Hmm.
like
Yeah, true. Yeah, we bring dogma into like culture as well, don't
yeah,
we?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So speaking of spirituality, like I was telling you before we started, like I saw a lot of myself in this book,
Right.
including the fact that, like I started at first and I'm just like, oh, there's some, okay, there's some like little witchy things here. And then I
Yes.
saw Mary Oliver and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like, so it's like, let's see if I can ask this question properly, but um, how was so you had this, um, sort of upbringing,
Hmm.
within the Christian evangelical church, like, as much as you want or don't want to like tell about like what was your spiritual journey like, and to be like, do you feel like you're in a more settled place spiritually?
Yeah, much more, much
Yeah,
more. And I think it's because I finally allowed myself to like bring Jesus with me, like
yeah.
I mean
Oh,
I'll
that Jesus thing. I was just like, I'm having some feelings to reading this, and it's interesting, and I'm gonna talk to my therapist about it in my next
okay.
session. No, it was just fun. It was just
Oh my
fun
God.
for me.
Well, I mean, what it can be whatever it is. But no, for those who are unaware, there's a love letter in this book to Jesus Christ, and like it gets very kind of sexy. And my TMI admission for this panel will be that I actually, part of the my early realization that I was queer is that some of my like first like sexual desire feelings were for like directed at images of the Christ.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, come on, he's always like
Yeah.
shirtless, like yes.
With the hairy chest, yeah, and the beard, yeah. I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
huh, maybe I should explore honoring Jesus in some way?
So blasphemous, right? Like I'm blushing just talking about it, but like I knew that I was because I had these feelings for him, and
Yeah.
and then when I became a critical social justice activist or whatever, that's not what I called myself at the time, but I was like an activist, and I just really felt like I had to leave my spirituality behind, like I had to leave Christ
Yeah,
behind, and I'm not a Christian, I cannot actually integrate the doctrines into my life, but I love like many of the concepts inside of the archetype of Jesus
absolutely.
Christ, and I love um actually love the masculinity of Jesus Christ. So like the
Hmm.
soft healer, like come on,
Yeah, totally.
so hot. And then the witchiness is about, I have this theory that queer and trans people are like more predisposed to witchiness than maybe the average
Hmm.
population. And you see that reflected in like our choice of like movies or whatever, right? But
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I like our love of astrology, but I think it's
Yeah.
because at its base, witchcraft is about like a deep sense of intuition and like ritual and like coming into the self, like defying the laws of like regular people or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
whether or not we choose this, I mean, we usually don't. Queer and trans people are usually like born into one setting where like all of the social conditioning it says, don't do this thing, let's be queer. But queerness arrives, like desire for the naked form of Jesus Christ or whoever we're desiring, or like the gender like kind of non-conforming tendencies. They emerge from the body like as this mysterious knowing. There's something that
Hmm.
like there's a power to that, and that knowing calls us to leave the doctrines that we're born into. We have to seek out like, and I'm going to get a little poetic here, like we have to seek out communion in the night, right? Like in literally
Yes.
in many cases, in secret, we have to do this coming of age that's powerful, and in many ways that I see as like an initiation. um and I think that's why, queer and trans people make the best witches. It's because of that secret knowing that we have to follow
Hmm.
regardless of where it takes us. And I mean, if that's
Oh, I
not,
love that.
shamanic, I don't know what is.
Oh, I love that. That just like really, I don't know, that like really uplifts my heart to hear something like that.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yay! I bless
absolutely.
your
Yeah.
witchy soul. Go forth and do witchcraft.
It's been like a long, complicated road with witchy stuff for me. I mean, I've been doing it since I was a teen.
Oh yeah.
And I wasn't raised in any particular faith. My mom is just like, you, do what makes you happy or whatever. My
Okay.
grandmother's evangelical, and my other
Ah,
grandmother was Catholic.
okay,
But
okay.
my parents were just like, whatever. And so yeah, it's and you know what I've always like I think as a queer person, um, and as a witchy person, just wanting that community, right? Like to
Mm,
create this little coven or whatever
yes.
of people. And I've always kind of struggled. I think sometimes in queer communities, I don't know if it's the same with trans folks as well, but sometimes people are still struggling with connection, and so I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, I want to love you. Like, let's just like spend so much time together and let's talk and just be in communion with each other. And people are just like, I only want to see you like once a month or like twice a year, and it's just
Right,
like, no. And I'm good with my blood family, like I'm
right.
good with them, but like I just that idea of having this queer trans just like the misfits, it's just
Hmm.
like I just want misfit love.
Oh, and I deeply feel that same long actually, these days I actually like spend a lot of time hiding in my house, but
I do some of that too.
yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I'm an introvert, but like when I was a teenager, I grew up in like a very urban area, like in Vancouver in Canada, and
Mhm.
every Friday night I'd go to like the like gay and bisexual. They didn't have like that was the acronym at the time, GAB, gay and bisexual, like youth group.
Yeah.
And of course there were all kinds of gender weirdos like myself there too. And it was actually the only time in my life, like that like 14 to 16 kind of period where I really felt like a consistency of like a queer community that had like many, many different kinds of queerness inside it in a regular way. Like we had gays, lesbians, trans people, bi people. Pansexual was not very popular at the time, but we definitely had that,
Yeah.
like, and as I grew up, that thing happens, right? Where like the gay men split off and do their own little like gay man
Mm,
thing. And then
mm-hmm,
within gay
mm-hmm.
men, they also split off further into like racial groups and stuff.
Yes.
Lesbians go in that direction, and then like trans people go in this direction, and then trans masculine and then trans feminine, and there's all these separations. And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, partly the reason that all of us were there together as teens is that there was only one group. Like, we couldn't split off.
Yeah,
And as
yeah.
adults, you do these things. But I do feel such a longing, like for queer community that actually is has some of the strengths of the church, which is that it brings people together in a regular way around like connection, conversation, mealtime. Queer community does that sometimes, but also
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think not as strongly as a lot of churches do. And of course, what queer community does very strongly that a lot of churches don't is that it affirms the sexuality and the desire and the freedom pieces,
Yes.
more.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I want all of it at the same time.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to encourage folks to ask questions. We haven't gotten any questions yet, so please feel free to ask questions. Um, yeah, something that I touched upon that I touched upon before we got started, and you touched upon very briefly in the book, is a little geekiness
Yes. Oh
going
my
on.
God. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. What's up with that? What are your fandoms? What are you a gamer? Et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, so my one geek thing that I don't really do well is video games because I wasn't allowed them when I was a child. So I
Yeah.
just never developed the skill set. But that said, my spouse is teaching me to play Baldur's Gate 3, which is like a
Okay.
fantasy
Sounds
video game.
familiar.
Yeah, it's like a Dungeons and Dragons thing. But my actual like deep nerdy geekdom is in comic books.
Uh,
Yeah, like I was like into Marvel before Marvel movies had come out, like
yeah, yeah.
I was like all in there with the X-Men and oh my God. So yeah, and there's poetry in here. I guess that's about that. Yeah, one particular piece is about like a love letter to like the sidekicks, like
Oh, yeah.
the Robins of the world
Yeah,
and the Wonder
yeah. And his
Girls and
hot pants.
it is hot. I mean, okay, if we want to talk about queer codedness, like what's up with Robin? But yes,
Yeah.
that's my geek gem is comic books.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I never really got into comic books. I live with my brother now. He loves
Okay,
comics.
really? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And now he's moved on to models where he creates these little fantasy creatures and then he paints them.
Oh
I haven't
yeah,
seen it, but I
yeah.
guess that's a thing.
I've heard
Yeah.
about that. Yeah, my spouse was into
Yeah.
that as well. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I'm more of a like watching all the sci-fi movies, all the sci-fi TV shows.
I love those. I also,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that's I think that's another like area where I struggled sometimes with finding a little bit of love too. Because I think people can be very particular about like, like, oh, this has gone downhill since this person started,
Right.
was in the role for and it's just like, can't we just enjoy it?
I know. Well, we really saw that with like some of the latest Star Wars movies that came out,
Mhm.
right? Like there was this huge outcry because of like the diverse casting of
Yeah.
like the most recent three Star Wars movies and this whole fandom war. And I was like, my God, like similarly, why can't we just enjoy this? And also, why can't we have people of color in Star Wars? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and it comes back again to that thing we were talking about, like that scarcity mindset of if you bring Black and Asian people into Star Wars, then are white fans going to feel threatened? Obviously, not all of them, but a significant number
Yeah.
did, and made
Hmm.
that known. Um, and I mean, if we get so triggered and like frightened over Star Wars movies, like if we can't share Star Wars, how are we going to share the real
Oh yeah.
world? You know?
Yeah, seriously. It's like, girl, it's fantasy.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Let's calm down.
I love Doctor Who,
Ah,
and
okay.
of course there was a big to do when
Yes.
there is a woman as the
Yes.
doctor.
Yes.
I have a friend who calls the UK Turf Island
So all
because
of my
of
friends call the UK Turf Island.
yeah. And I'm like, I love the UK, but yeah, that's also true. I can hold two things at the same time. Like it's just like I love the UK and it's true, like when all these different gender bills was going down over there, and I was like, because I'm like really clued into their like political and news stuff. I was just like,
Right,
oh
right.
my God. Just like
Yeah.
the comments, it's just like somehow it's worse than things you hear here. Somehow.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, there's a scary legislation happening in the United States and even in Canada. I've thought
Oh
for a
my
long
God.
time Canada was insulated from that, but now we
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
transphobic bills coming through here as well, and
Yeah.
it's
You know,
scary. It's a scary time to live.
yeah, when people used to say in the US, like, I mean, people don't say this anymore, I don't think, but it's like, oh, run away to Canada. It's like there's nowhere to go anymore.
No,
It's
no.
like you
I
can't go to
mean,
Europe because they're all being Islamophobic and xenophobic and transphobic over there, like so it's like there's nowhere to go.
no, and I mean, maybe that's a call, right, to for us
Mm,
to do activism in the places that we are,
yeah, yeah,
which is easier said than done when,
yeah.
it is getting scary everywhere. And
Hmm.
the political polarization that we live in is like deeply disturbing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Something that noticed in the book
Hmm.
is that uh as a Canadian, you don't really bring up Canada or being Canadian in the book. But I think I know why, because it's
Oh,
just like this is if we start dividing ourselves up in like trans Canadians are like this and trans British are like that, it's like
right.
we're kind of dividing ourselves rather than like connecting our shared struggles.
For
Um,
sure.
yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't know if that was the reason, but that was my theory.
I mean, there's a lot in there. I think there are some differences between the American and Canadian political experience, but it is largely
Yeah.
similar. And I do think that like connection and solidarity, as you're saying, is really important to me. And then there's this other thing about Canada is like its own little weird, like extremely oppressive in some ways, like nation state, and yeah, like that takes its own book, like
Yeah.
there's like extreme people think Canada is so great, but we, have had a cultural genocide, in this country, and
Yes.
there's been so many historical oppressions in Canada. And actually, so no, I've never spoken about this in an interview before, but there was a love letter to Canada that was gonna go in the book.
Oh.
Yeah, and it didn't in the end, but I wrote that love letter on Canada Day, which is like
Yeah.
it's the Canadian July 4th, except we have a July
Yeah.
1st. And
Yeah.
it was a love letter to Canada and really like speaking about, we had our own version of the Japanese internment and the Chinese exclusion.
Mm,
America, of
mm-hmm,
course, had those things too, and we had again the cultural
mm-hmm.
genocide of Indigenous peoples here, and then people think there wasn't enslavement in Canada, but there was. It just took a kind of a different format and different historical kind of shape. But
Yeah.
so it was about those things, and we eventually took out the letter because it didn't quite fit like in the same way with the other pieces, and also it felt like the topics that it was touching on really needed more space to
Mm,
get into. And so
mm-hmm.
yeah, I appreciate you bringing up Canada because it just is like a
Yeah.
whole can of worms on its own.
It is. I have a good friend who grew up here in the States and moved to Canada to be with his
Okay,
husband.
right.
Uh, but it's funny when he was moving, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, are you moving to like Toronto?" Like he's like, "No." He he moved to Lloydminster, Alberta, on the border between Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Oh yeah, that's very not Toronto. That is a
Yeah.
different experience.
And he's
Yeah.
like, I live in the Texas of Canada."
Yeah, well, a lot of people
Yeah.
don't know is that the some of like there's like a very strong like evangelical Christian community
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
Alberta, and they are like
Mm-hmm.
people who moved from the South of America because they felt the South
Oh.
of America was getting too progressive.
Oh.
You
I didn't
have a
know
very
that.
intense pocket of conservatism in Canada for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, if
Yep.
anyone is more curious about Canada, ask questions. Like, come visit us. It's complex.
Yeah, yeah. There are oil fields in Alberta. There's big trucks. There are Christians.
Truth. I mean,
There's a
and
secessionist movement.
there is a secessionist movement. There's a few secessionist movements in Canada. Like I
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
it's a
Everybody
whole
knows
can of
Quebec,
worms.
but
Yes,
yeah.
everybody knows about Quebec. It's a whole can of worms.
Yeah. Yeah, there was just so many. I felt it was quite a journey. This book was just quite a journey, and I felt, at some moments I kind of was tearing up a little bit,
Hmm.
as a person who was feeling similar experience, or like feeling an empathy for my trans sisters and trans people in
Hmm.
general,
Hmm.
and all the things that folks have to deal with. Just there's I mean, you touch upon this a lot of like being viewed as a monster, and some people are doing interesting stuff with that, right,
Totally.
in fiction and stuff.
Yes, yes.
um uh like trans fiction is really good. It's like really
It's
exploring all that
incredible.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, it's like, like just going around the world and having people giving you looks, or it's just, I just really felt, my heart breaking. So,
Oh, yeah. Thanks for
yeah.
saying so. I am fascinated by this concept of the monster. And as you say, trans
Mm-hmm.
fiction and queer fiction too has had a long association with the exploration of the monster and monstrosity.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of brings us back to this, like the notion of like the shadow haunting society, right? And like
Yeah.
trans people are kind of in the spotlight right now. People are all calling us groomers and saying horrible things like that. But of course, that's just recycled language. That's what they were calling gays and lesbians in the 80s and 90s, and then before that in the 60s and
Yeah.
50s. There's something there, in the collective psyche. Carl Jung would have called that like, the unconscious shadow, right? Like the part of ourselves that we reject, and then, as a society, we reject things. And I think the Jungian question about the shadow or the monster is always like, well, what would be possible if you didn't fear the monster inside of you, or what would be possible if we
Yeah.
didn't fear the monster in society? And I think what happens when we learn to embrace and to confront our fear of the monstrous, whether that's the monstrous inside ourselves or the monstrous
Mm-hmm.
outside ourselves, is that we discover much deeper humanity in everyone and ourselves. And there's this interesting thing about queerness, right? Like I think a lot about like how the kind of the conservative lawmakers who are creating all these terrible laws about homosexuality, queerness, right? Often themselves at some point have like a scandal where they're found in a hotel with like
Mm-hmm.
a Twinkie escort or something, right? And it's like a classic case of repression. Um,
Yeah.
and it's funny on one level, and it's sad on the other, because that I
Mm-hmm.
just think about, for those conservative people, like what could their lives be like if they just allow themselves to be, their version of the monster, which is, the homosexual, and how much
Yeah.
better all of us would be if they could just do it, and not like make the rest of us miserable.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's true about, so J.K. Rowling, if we go back to that statement for a second, I really encourage people to read that thing she wrote. It's still up there on her website in 2021. She has all these long, long, long paragraphs. And then somewhere, just near closer to the end, there's this paragraph where she says she's super concerned about young people coming to identify as trans. And then she says herself, because she might have identified as a trans boy if that option had been available to her. And of course, she takes this in the direction of, well, and now I'm a happy woman and blah, blah, blah. But like, I'm like, oh, but
Hmm.
J.K. Rowling, like, There's just
Interesting.
something haunting about like, what if she had been allowed to identify, to explore gender in like wild and wonderful ways in her own youth? What if all the people who, are so terrified of, supposed trans groomers out there, what if all those people, had not received like horrific gender conditioning, as all of us do, in their own childhoods? Maybe we'd be a lot better off. So this is what I really mean about, embracing the monster. Is like there's no such thing. Really, there's no such thing as a monster.
Mhm.
When we learn to when we learn to take a deeper look.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah, it's really making me feel like, wow, it's tough enough for those of us that like love are honoring
Mm.
these parts of ourselves to love ourselves every
Oh yeah.
day.
Oh yeah.
Like I can't even imagine for somebody like that who's just so
Repressed.
hating them. Yeah. This is a totally out of left, was that like left field
Uh-huh.
thing,
Sure.
but it reminds me of an Elvira movie
I
where
love
she
Elvira, so bring it on.
yes, where she drops like the potion goes into the thing that goes to the potluck and all the people get all like sexual, all the buttoned up people get all sexual. I
Oh,
don't
I
remember
don't know
what
this
movie is
movie, but
that.
I'm gonna have to find it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just like maybe that's what we need. We need to like, okay, queer people, let's get a potion together and like drop it into, so they can all just be free and live in their lives
Oh, that's so, I mean, I do
and leave
think
us alone.
well, the world would be better with, I think, with like
Yeah.
more liberation. So,
Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, on that silly note, we'll close things up. If anybody has a question, we have a couple minutes. But I don't see any questions.
it's a
I
shy
hope,
audience today.
yeah, I hope you all enjoyed our conversation. But yeah, it was such an honor to talk with you this evening, Kai, and please buy her book.
Oh,
Um,
thank you. That's very
it
kind. Yeah.
it's a small but powerful being here. Um, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by its size.
I love that. I'm gonna put that as my
Yeah.
tagline now. A small but powerful being. You can't say, but I'm very short in real life. So,
Ah. Yeah, and I'm ready to read the rest of your stuff, like your poetry and your
oh, thank
essays.
you.
I'm ready to dive into your world.
Oh, that's really kind. Thank you so much.
Yes, and thanks everyone for joining us and listening to us, and please join us again for a future program.
Yes, this has been a delight. Thank
Yes.
you for having me.
Have a great evening.